Hey everyone, welcome back to KC3D Sparks. Today we're going to be creating some benches for our area back here. So we'll make some nice benches. They're going to be kind of Gothic revival inspired. So feel free to make these look creepier if you want, because they're definitely not going to look super scary. They're going to look a little bit more church-like. Maybe as they were repurposed for this dungeon or something. I don't know. But we'll go ahead, make some benches for back here. That'll be pretty nice. And if you wanted, I'll mention how you can make some fancier ones for back here. And then next week we'll probably get into the actual altar and that kind of thing. So go ahead, hop to your layer, make sure that your scene tab, you are working in the units that you prefer. I'll be working in inches, and in my display, I change the scale of my grid floor to 1/4 of an inch. I'm gonna hop into the front view here, and we'll just do Shift A, Mesh, and Cube to start. Now this is 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches. That's a little large for probably what we want to do. I do want the benches to be pretty big, so I'm probably going to do, I don't want it to be exactly 3, probably a little bit smaller. Let's just do 2.75 to start, and we can always size it up. For the Y, we'll probably do 0.25 to start, and the Z, I'm just going to put at 0.5. And that will be sized down, definitely. There we go. Go ahead and zoom in on that. I'm just going to hide that menu by hitting N. Tab into edit mode. We'll just go ahead, start off by doing Control R. Leave that loop in the center. Z, A, B for border select, X, and delete those vertices. So I'm just going to go over here to our modifier tab. And we will add our mirror modifier and make sure you check that clipping box. Awesome. So I'm just going to test that. Okay, it stayed perfect. So obviously this is going to be, we're just going to start with the actual bench seat itself. So I'm just going to grab these top ones here and pull that way down to maybe about there, however thick you want it to be. So I think right there should be good to start. And we're just going to do Control R. Scroll that up so we get 2 loops, and then we'll just hit S and X so we can size that to be right about there. So you'll notice that we get that on each side. Perfect. So what I want to do is B for border select, grab that, E to extrude, and we're just going to pull that out maybe a little bit further so the side can be a little bit chunkier than the center. So maybe more like that. So I'm going to start by making the center post. So I'm just going to hit A for deselect. Just grab those 2, E to extrude, and pull that down to right about there. Actually, you know what? We're going to do a little bit further. So that was only 1/4 of an inch. I'd like it to be a little bit taller. So maybe like right past that 1/4 of an inch. And grab those, pull them down. And what we can do to make sure that our bench isn't uneven, we can hit SZ0 to make sure they are completely level. Actually, that might be a little bit too tall, so we're just going to shrink that down a little bit. Just like that. Perfect. So there are the beginnings of our bench legs. It's actually a little bit too thin. I think I'd like it closer to 1/2 inch than 1/4. So I'm just going to go ahead, select our back loops here and pull that out so it can be a little bit deeper. I think that'll be nicer. Then all we can do is just do Control R, put that maybe right about there for however thick you want the back to be. Switch to face select mode. Grab this top L right here, E to extrude. We're going to go into side view, pull that up right past our Y axis. So once we have this built up here, I actually want to go ahead and do Control R and add another loop to be right about there. So it's kind of matching the width of this guy here. So that looks pretty good. Go ahead, go back into face select. And we'll grab these guys, E to extrude, pull that up to maybe about our 1/4, or our grid line. Then we can deselect. You can deselect this one if you want. I think I'm gonna try something and actually leave that selected. We're gonna hit E to extrude and pull that up to maybe about there. And then I will have to go ahead and I'm gonna grab these two edges first, pull that up. And you can see, like, after we pull that straight up, you can definitely tell that this one's shorter. So we'll have to pull this out to make that a little bit more even. Oops. Except you'll definitely want to make sure that you grab all the edge loops or the faces, whichever one is easier, so you can make them even. So I'm thinking right about there looks better. Okay, so for this one, we'll go ahead, add an edge loop. And I wanted to pull this up first because it would be easier to pull this up without the interference of that extra edge loop, and then we wouldn't have to fix it. So we can grab this guy, pull that up just like that. So from here, I want to go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier. And I like to usually crank that up to 3 for our view. And I'm just going to go ahead, switch to vertex select, and sharpen a lot of these loops at the bottom here. Obviously, I want all of them. Shift E. Shift E. Make sure you get this back one here, or else you'll get that weird webbing look. Just like that. And for this, I don't really want the legs to be beveled like that, so I'll probably do Shift E on them as well, because the Gothic style doesn't really have rounded edges like that. It's more obvious whenever they have something like that. So yes, I'll grab these guys. I'm definitely no expert by any means, but yeah. Shift E. And to kind of fix some of the stuff here, instead of sharpening those edges, because it would be nice for this part to be a little bit beveled, what we're gonna do is add 2 loops, do S and X, and just push them out to kind of flatten the edges out a little bit, which will help. That way we can keep this rounded back here, which will be nice. So there's that. We'll definitely want to sharpen all of this. Sharpen that and that edge. And this part here is just a little bit too dramatic. So what I'm going to do is grab, these 3 vertices, go into side view, do Shift E and just watch it. So right now it still has a little dip there. So what we'll have to do is keep sharpening until it kind of flattens out just like that. So you might just have to zoom in and wait, but once it's that black bold part, you'll be able to see, like, okay, keep that bevel, but I don't have to add in extra geometry and do Control B, that kind of thing. It's a little bit easier. So I do want this part up here to be sharp, so we'll do that, and we'll want that on this side as well. Except I'm just going to do the top 2. Make sure that that gets sharpened as well as this. And then we'll also need these guys. There we go. That looks much better. Because we're going to add in more geometry later, I'm not going to worry about sharpening these a little bit. We'll just wait and see how it turns out. But I do want that to be a little bit more defined, but we're gonna wait on that. Oh, except I forgot to sharpen this part here. That's what I'm missing, so we'll make sure we sharpen those. Ah, that's much better. Okay, so for Gothic style, usually they have kind of like, some of them will have kind of a relief almost. That's probably not the right term, but they have a design inset in the sides of them. So that's what we're going to kind of imitate here. So first we're going to set that up. So we already did one loop here. So I'm going to add another one to the other side to kind of mirror that. What is popping out? What is this? That's the other side. Okay, so we can ignore that. So we'll go ahead and do that and that. Add 2 more loops right here. So you can see already that it's kind of defining these edges a little bit more as well. So it should be adding, yeah, more definition to here, which is nice. So once we have that, we're gonna go ahead and add another loop. Actually, before we add more loops, what we'll wanna do is just get our actual extrusion lined up. So what we're gonna do is hit E to extrude, just hit escape, and we're gonna size that in to maybe right about there. I'd like a nice thick border, but you'll notice the bottom got brought up pretty far. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab that bottom piece and pull that down. And actually I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen that as well as this piece to help later on. So now we can go ahead, grab all of these, hit E to extrude. I'm going to go into front view, focus in on it, go into wireframe view, and we're going to pull that back to right about the center. So if I switch to face select, you'll be able to see the center. So we'll pull that right about there then to match where the selection point is for those faces. So that looks pretty good. Go back into side view, make sure everything looks good, which it does. The only thing I want to change really is this one right here. We're gonna hit Shift E to sharpen that to match the top. Awesome. So now we already started getting our line set up. Oh, and we also want to sharpen this guy as well. Don't forget those. Okay. Now that that's all set up, we already have our vertical line set up properly. I want to go ahead and add a loop here. Let's go ahead and leave it as is, and we can start setting up our arches. So I'm going to switch back to vertex select mode, just deselect everything with A. And this one is going to be our center point, because with most Gothic styles, they just have the arches inside of their arch. So that's just kind of what we're going to replicate a little bit with this. So for this center one, I'm just going to pull that down to maybe right about there. This one we'll go ahead and pull up to here. These guys are probably pretty good. This one I'll pull up to kind of match that. Actually, what we need to do is do SZ0 to make sure they're even. That would be better. And then what we could also do to make sure these points are good, but we don't want to grab anything else extra, so make sure all of those are fine. We can also do SZ0 to flatten out those to make sure that everything is good. And I'm just going to widen those a little bit and those a little bit, just like that. Then we can do Control R, add 2 loops right here, and I'm just going ahead and left clicked and right click so they would stay as is. So our center points here are fine. We just have to adjust the middle 3 of each. So I'm just going to pull these up and this one up to mirror just like that. So these guys, pull them up. Just like that. And we could go ahead and actually grab these top ones because it does get a little thin there. So maybe bring those up to widen that out a little bit. That looks better. Oh, except we should have grabbed this one as well. So we can pull them up together. There we go. So now we have our matching arches. Go ahead, switch to face select. Oh, except we also need our poles. So we'll do Control R one more time. Pull that in. That in. Control R. We'll make that one right about there. Whoops. And Control R right about there. Okay. Switch to face select. So I'm going to grab these guys here. Don't forget the ones in the arches and the ones above the arches. Okay. I'm going to go into front view, hit Z for wireframe view, hit E to extrude. I'm just going to pull that back. I don't want it too deep, probably more, I don't know, right about there. And we can see how it looks. And actually, I'm just going to go ahead and hit Shift E and just sharpen everything to kind of get that to pop out. I'm going to switch to vertex select mode. I'm going to grab these two and these two, sharpen that, and then I'm going to do the same to the other side. So we'll grab those 4. And then I also want to grab this loop here and this loop here and just sharpen that. And that looks pretty good. I want to sharpen these guys. Excuse me. There we go. Just like that. So if you wanted to add more detail, obviously you could add a loop, make some details in here. You could add in any number of things, honestly. But I think what I want to do at the moment is just see if I can make this a little thicker. So what I'm gonna do so if we wanted to make this thicker, because it is a little thin, you could go ahead and grab these inner faces here and then switch this to individual origins and just hit S and size that down. Except I'm gonna hit Shift X to make sure it's not doing the making it thinner. Yeah, so that way it keeps that same depth. The only problem is we'll have to go back down here and pull these faces down, but I like the arches the way they are now. I think it looks better, a little bit thicker. So all we'll have to do is just go into wireframe view, B for border select, hold Shift to deselect, and we can just pull these guys back down to be perfectly flat right there. Awesome. Yes, I definitely like the thicker version better. So that will do. So let's go ahead and move this to our first layer here and take a look. Yeah, so that actually fits within our 3 squares pretty well. You could definitely make them a little smaller if you wanted, but let's go ahead and actually pull it above the floor so we could see everything. It is pretty thin, isn't it? I would like to do S and Y and really thicken that up, actually. See, more like that, I think looks better. But now the back is really thick. So what I'm probably going to do instead is tab into edit mode and just grab the C itself. Oh, and actually we forgot one part. What we want to do is actually grab this section here, because usually the Pews seat will stick out a little bit from the actual arm itself. We're going to hit E to extrude, pull that out, and we'll go ahead and sharpen this whole face so we keep that bevel on this edge here, but we have that nice flat edge on the side. Okay, anyway, now that we remember to do that part, we'll go ahead and do vertex select, grab all of these, and pull that out to be more like that. That's better. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's just go ahead and do rotate 180 degrees. I'm gonna save this, and actually I'm gonna duplicate it so that way I can hide the first one. Actually, I'll just move that back to the layer we were working on. And this will be our applied one. So we can push this back, hit Shift D to move that to the other side. Which actually we'll want these to be right about here. More like that. Cool. And if you wanted, you could even do Shift D, rotate 90, grab that, put it against this wall. Grab this one, do rotate 90, and then just hit negative. Put that against that wall. Just like that. It's a little close together, but you can arrange them how you would prefer. It might look better if you actually have a whole 5 feet in front. So what we can do is push that back. Push these back as far as we can against that, and then maybe we won't have these guys, or we could, oops, wrong thing. Push this in and push that one in just like that. Or arrange your dungeon however you would prefer. You could do that. You could delete these front two, which I think I might. But if you have any questions, just let me know down in the comments below. Oh, and if you want to make a fancier one to be like, you know, your elite members of the cult or whatever, you could grab this, do a taller back essentially, and then build a wall in front of it that has like pedestals where they could put their tomes or other books in front of it. That could be kind of cool looking. But if you wanted, just let me know if you'd like to see an actual build of that. I could always make a separate video. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.